A Korean mafia boss orders in a foreign language to humiliate the waitress. He froze at her reply. He saw her name tag read Zora, glanced at her dark skin and smirked. To Kim Jang, head of the notorious Jung Gang crime family, the black American waitress was just another target for his amusement. The exclusive Korean restaurant in Manhattan was his unofficial territory, where he entertained business associates and displayed his power. Tonight, he decided the waitress would be his evening's entertainment. He didn't know that Zora Williams wasn't just any server. He had no idea that his attempt to humiliate her would not only backfire spectacularly, but would unravel a dangerous web he'd spent years weaving. This is the story of how arrogance crossed the wrong woman. If you enjoy stories of unexpected comeuppance, hit that like button and subscribe to Heartline stories to see more powerful comebacks like this one. The air inside Hansang, Manhattan's most prestigious Korean restaurant, smelled of premium beef, sizzling sesame oil and old money. For Zora Williams, it mostly smelled like survival. The scent of grilling samgyeopsal and bubbling jjigae mixed with the subtle cologne of wealthy businessmen. The low lighting cast elegant shadows across the dark wood paneling and the hand-painted murals of Korean landscapes. Hansang wasn't just a restaurant. It was a status symbol, a place where deals were made and hierarchies established. Zora moved between the tables with practiced grace, invisible until needed, the perfect server in a world that preferred not to acknowledge her existence beyond her function. She'd become good at this, the careful dance of serving without being seen, of anticipating needs without intruding on conversations, of smiling through thinly veiled contempt. She adjusted her crisp black uniform, tucking an escaped curl back into her tight bun. It was 9:30 p.m. on a Saturday. The VIP section was filled with wealthy businessmen, Korean expats, and the occasional celebrity. Table 8 needed more soju. Table 3 complained their galbi wasn't marinated enough. Move, Williams. Move. Mr. Park, the restaurant owner, hovered near the host station. A small, nervous man perpetually dabbing sweat from his forehead with a monogrammed handkerchief. Tonight, the sweat was flowing more freely than usual. His eyes darted continuously to the front door. His body tense like a man awaiting execution. Kim Jung is here, he whispered urgently when Zora passed by. Table 1 full service. No mistakes. The words sent a ripple of tension through the staff. Kim Jung. The name wasn't spoken. It was hissed. A warning passed from one server to another like a high-voltage current. Everyone knew Kim's reputation. Though he presented as a legitimate businessman, CEO of KJ Enterprises with investments spanning real estate, import-export and technology, his other enterprises were whispered about in fearful tones. Men who crossed him disappeared. Restaurants that refused his protection burned down. Zora nodded silently. She needed this job. The tips from VIP tables paid her mother's medical bills and her younger brother's college tuition. What nobody at Hansang knew was that Zora Williams wasn't just a waitress. 3 years ago, she had been a rising star at the State Department with a master's in international relations, specializing in East Asian security. She spoke 5 languages fluently, including Korean. Not just conversational Korean, but the nuanced regional dialects that revealed class, education, and origin. She could switch between the formal literary language of diplomacy and the street slang of Seoul's back alleys. And then came the diplomatic incident. A security breach during delicate negotiations with North Korea. An intelligence leak that wasn't her fault, but became her responsibility. The whispers in the hallways, the investigations, the quiet suggestion to resign before she was fired. The blacklisting from government work that followed her like a shadow. The medical bills that piled up when her mother's cancer returned. The apartment downsized to a studio. The dreams deferred. The restaurant job that paid in cash. So now she carried trays instead of diplomatic briefcases. She memorized wine lists instead of intelligence reports, and she kept her head down, her knowledge hidden behind a server's polite smile. Kim Jung entered Hansang flanked by 2 silent men in expensive suits. Not bodyguards exactly, but men whose stillness suggested violence held carefully in check. Kim didn't walk. He processed through the restaurant like royalty granting an audience. He stood just under 6 feet tall, his body lean and hard beneath a tailored Brioni suit that probably cost more than Zora's annual rent. His hair was styled in the latest Korean fashion, shaved at the sides with length on top. A watch that could pay for her brother's entire college education gleamed on his wrist. But it was his eyes that marked him as dangerous. Cold, assessing, the kind of eyes that evaluated everything as property to be acquired or obstacles to be removed. The restaurant shifted in his presence. The staff stiffened. Conversations dimmed. Even the sizzling of meat seemed to quiet in his presence, as if the food itself knew better than to draw attention. Mr. Park scurried over, bowing so low he nearly folded in half. "Mr. Kim, it is an honor. Your usual table is prepared." Kim didn't respond. He didn't need to. His slightest nod was enough to send Mr. Park backing away, still bowing, directing his employees with frantic hand gestures to prepare table 1. The best table in the house, positioned to see the entire restaurant while offering privacy. Zora approached table 1, her professional mask firmly in place. Not too friendly, not too distant. Invisible but efficient. It was a delicate balance she perfected through necessity. "Good evening, sir. Welcome to Hansang. My name is Zora, and I'll be taking care of you tonight." Kim didn't acknowledge her greeting. He didn't even look at her as he sat down, the chair pulled out by one of his companions. He examined his gold watch, adjusted his cufflinks. A man performing the rituals of power. Only then did he look up, eyes landing on her face, then her name tag, then traveling down to her hands. The hands of someone who worked for a living. A smile that never reached his eyes curved his lips. "You know who I am?" he asked. His English perfect but deliberately accented, as if to emphasize his foreignness, his otherness from her. "Yes, Mr. Kim. It's an honor to serve you tonight. Would you like to start with something to drink?" Kim turned to his associates and said something in Korean that made them laugh. The words sliced through the air, sharp and dismissive. She probably thinks Korean food is just barbecue and bibimbap. These Americans know nothing of true cuisine. Especially this one. This one. The way he said it made it clear he wasn't just talking about Americans. Turning back to her, Kim switched to English. "Bring us your best soju, and not the commercial kind you serve tourists." "Of course, sir. Would you like to see our premium spirits menu? We have several small batch regional varieties." "No need." Kim waved dismissively. "Just don't bring garbage." As Zora turned to leave, Kim called after her. "Wait." His voice stopped her like a hand on the shoulder. She turned back, keeping her expression neutral despite the crawling sensation up her spine. Kim's eyes gleamed with malicious intent. He had found his evening's entertainment. "Tell me," Kim said, leaning back in his chair. "Do you even know what Korean food is besides barbecue?" The question hung in the air, loaded with assumptions. His associates snickered. The man to his right muttered something about ignorant Americans. The table was enjoying their private joke at her expense. "I'm familiar with Korean cuisine, sir," Zora answered diplomatically. The statement was a gross understatement. She had spent months in Korea during her diplomatic posting. Had eaten in homes from Seoul to Busan. Had learned cooking techniques from grandmothers who insisted she was too thin. Kim's smile widened. He had her exactly where he wanted her. He was about to spring his trap, to humiliate her for his own amusement and to demonstrate his superiority to his companions. He turned to his associates. "Watch this. She'll be completely lost." He looked back at Zora and switched to Korean. But not just any Korean. He spoke in a rapid regional Busan dialect, peppered with criminal slang that even most native Koreans would struggle to follow. His words came fast, deliberately complex, designed to confuse and embarrass. "Listen carefully, girl. I want the chef to prepare me raw sea squirt marinated in chili oil with fermented skate. Tell him it must be prepared in the traditional Gyeongsan style, not the modern Seoul interpretation. And if you bring me commercial soju, I'll make sure you never work in this city again. Do you understand anything I'm saying? Or is your small American brain confused? Perhaps you should stick to serving fried chicken and watermelon." The racist barb at the end was delivered with particular venom, a gratuitous cruelty meant to entertain his companions, even though he assumed she wouldn't understand it. He sat back, arms crossed, a triumphant smirk on his face. His associates were barely containing their laughter, already enjoying the spectacle of the black American waitress stammering in confusion, apologizing for not understanding, perhaps even calling for another server who spoke Korean. Think our waitress is in trouble? Think again. Click subscribe and hit the notification bell on Heartline stories to see more underdogs turning the tables on those who underestimate them. Zora stood perfectly still. The restaurant seemed to hold its breath. The clink of silverware on fine china faded. The murmur of conversation dimmed. For 3 seconds she said nothing, her face revealing nothing. 3 seconds where she thought about her mother in the hospital, about her brother's tuition, about her rent due in 5 days. 3 seconds where she weighed the cost of dignity against necessity. 3 seconds where she decided that some things were worth more than a job. Then she smiled. Not the practiced smile of a server, but the sharp knowing smile of someone who has just been dealt a winning hand. She adjusted her posture, squared her shoulders, and looked Kim directly in the eyes. A cultural taboo that instantly shifted the energy at the table. When she spoke, she answered in perfect Korean. Not just standard Korean but the exact regional Busan dialect he had used, matching his criminal slang word for word. Of course, sir. Raw sea squirt with chili oil and fermented skate in traditional Gyeongsan style. An excellent choice that shows your refined palate. However, I should inform you that Chef Min specializes in the jeoladu preparation, which better complements our house fermented skate. As for the soju, we have a rare small batch Anong soju aged in pine barrels that I believe would impress even someone of your particular background and experience. She paused, then added in even more specific criminal slang. And regarding your concerns about my employment prospects, I assure you my understanding extends far beyond what's on our menu. As for your last comment, I prefer collard greens to watermelon, but thank you for your cultural sensitivity. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the silence of a bomb detonating in slow motion. Kim's associates froze mid-laugh. One of them nearly choked on his water. Kim himself sat rigid, his face transitioning from smug superiority to shock to something far more dangerous. Fury mixed with fear. Zora had not just understood him. She had responded with such specific knowledge of Korean regional cuisine that it demonstrated expertise, and her use of criminal slang specific to the Korean underworld, suggested she knew exactly who he was and what he did. Her reference to his particular background carried a weight that made it clear she wasn't talking about his corporate resume. Most dangerous of all, she had maintained eye contact throughout, challenging him in a way that his own men would never dare. For a single perfect moment, Zora allowed herself to enjoy the look on Kim's face. It was a small victory, but after 3 years of swallowing her pride, of being invisible, of pretending to be less than she was, it tasted sweeter than any revenge she could have imagined. Kim recovered quickly, but the damage was done. His authority had been publicly challenged. His companions shifted uncomfortably, avoiding his gaze. The power dynamic had shifted, if only for a moment. "Who are you?" Kim asked in English, his voice now cold as steel. "Just a waitress, sir," Zora replied, also switching to English. "Shall I put in your order?" Kim slammed his hand on the table. The crystal glasses jumped. Heads turned throughout the restaurant. "You think this is funny? Playing games with me?" The veneer of civilization was slipping, revealing something feral underneath. He turned to Mr. Park, who had rushed over at the sound of the disturbance. "Where did you find this woman?" "She's spying on me." "She's a cop or FBI?" Mr. Park trembled. "Sir, I assure you, I want her fired now, or your restaurant has problems. Big problems." The threat hung in the air, unmistakable. Zora stood calm amidst the storm. She knew she had made a critical error. Her pride had put her job at risk, a job her family desperately needed. But there was no taking it back now. Some humiliations you accept because you must. Others you reject because you can't live with yourself if you don't. Mr. Park looked at her with anguish. "Ms. Williams, please go to the office." As she turned to leave, Zora heard Kim make a phone call, speaking rapidly in Korean. "Find everything about a Zora Williams. Former government worker, speaks Korean. I want to know who she works for by morning." The words sent a chill through her. This wasn't just about a job anymore. Kim Young was not a man who tolerated threats or embarrassment, and he clearly saw her as both. The hallway to Mr. Park's office seemed to stretch forever. Zora walked with her head high, but her mind raced with the implications of what had just happened. She had stood up for herself, yes, but at what cost? Her mother's treatment, her brother's education, her own safety. The office was small, cluttered with invoices and employee schedules. There was a framed photo of Mr. Park with his family, a wife, 2 children, all smiling in front of the restaurant on its opening day. She wondered if he had known what he was getting into when he accepted Kim's patronage. If he understood that men like Kim never just wanted a table, they wanted ownership. Zora began gathering her things, certain she was about to be fired. She'd call her brother tonight, tell him they might need to look at cheaper schools. She'd call the hospital, see if they could work out a payment plan. She'd find another job. She'd survive. She always did. When the door opened, she expected Mr. Park, perhaps with security to escort her out. Instead, an elderly Korean man entered. The quiet customer who had been sitting alone at the corner table all evening, sipping tea and reading a newspaper. He was in his 70s, with silver hair and the ramrod straight posture of a military man. His suit was expensive but understated, his presence commanding without being imposing. He closed the door behind him. "Ms. Williams," he said in Korean. "That was quite impressive." "Thank you, but it's cost me my job." The man smiled. "Perhaps not." He switched to English. "My name is General Park Ji-hoon, retired South Korean intelligence." Zora froze. General Park was a legend in intelligence circles. His work in counterintelligence during the Cold War, his operations against North Korean infiltration, his diplomatic initiatives, all had been required reading during her State Department training. He was supposed to be living quietly in Seoul, not sitting in a Manhattan restaurant watching her commit career suicide. "I recognize you from the Seoul conference 3 years ago," he continued. "Your presentation on cross-border security cooperation was brilliant. Your analysis of the shifting alliances in the region was prescient. Your career ending as it did was unfortunate. You know about that? I know you were made a scapegoat. The leak came from much higher up. Someone with more connections, more protection than a young analyst, regardless of her brilliance." He paused, studying her face. "I also know Kim Jung is under investigation by both Korean and American authorities. His legitimate businesses are a front for money laundering, human trafficking, and drug distribution. His arrogance makes him careless." General Park handed her a business card. It was simple, elegant, with only his name and a phone number embossed in gold. "The Korean consulate has an immediate opening for a security liaison. Someone with your linguistic skills and knowledge of certain individuals would be invaluable." Zora stared at the card as if it might vanish if she blinked. "Why would you help me?" "Because talent should not be wasted serving men like Kim. Because your country made a mistake in discarding you. And because justice sometimes needs a gentle push." He smiled. "Also because the look on Kim's face when you spoke to him in his own dialect was the most entertaining thing I've seen in years." Zora felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time. Hope. Not just for a job but for redemption. For a chance to reclaim the life that had been stolen from her. But caution tempered her optimism. "Kim is dangerous. He's looking into me already. Let him look. By tomorrow your government clearance will be reinstated. By the end of the week you'll have diplomatic protection. Kim is powerful in certain circles, but even he doesn't challenge sovereign nations lightly. And Mr. Park, the restaurant, will be fine. Kim's influence is waning. He just doesn't know it yet." The general stood. "Call me tomorrow. We have much to discuss about your future, Ms. Williams, and about Mr. Kim's past." 3 months later, Kim Jung entered the Korean consulate in Manhattan, summoned for questioning about his business activities. The summons itself had been a shock, delivered not by some underling, but by a senior consular official, with a clear implication that refusal was not an option. He expected to charm his way through it, as he had many times before. A few well-placed lies, some strategic name-dropping, perhaps a hint at certain embarrassing information he possessed about officials back home. He had played this game many times and always won. The consulate was imposing, a modern building of glass and steel that reflected the Manhattan skyline. Kim was escorted through security, through marble hallways lined with Korean art, into a formal meeting room with a view of Central Park. The room was designed to intimidate with its austere elegance and official flags. He expected an older man, perhaps one susceptible to threats or bribes. Instead, he found himself facing Zora Williams, now dressed in a tailored suit, a diplomatic credential hanging around her neck, seated at the head of the conference table with a thick file open before her. She was not alone. Two serious men in dark suits flanked her, and a recording device sat prominently on the table. "Ms. Williams," he stammered, his confident facade cracking. "Special Liaison Williams," she corrected. "Please have a seat, Mr. Kim. We have much to discuss regarding your operations in both countries." The color drained from his face as she opened the file, containing details of his organization that only an insider could know. Shipping manifests for containers that had passed through customs with suspicious ease. Bank transfers through shell companies. Meetings with known criminal figures in Seoul, Tokyo, and Los Angeles. "How did you?" "Just a waitress with good ears, Mr. Kim. You should be more careful what you say in public." She smiled. "Or perhaps you should be more careful who you try to humiliate." Kim Jung, the feared Mafia boss who had built an empire on intimidation, sat down heavily. For the first time in his life he was truly afraid. Across town, in a care facility with new experimental treatments now fully covered by diplomatic health insurance, Zora's mother was teaching her new Korean nurse how to make traditional Southern cornbread. Her brother was thriving in his engineering program at MIT, his tuition worries behind him, and Zora Williams had found her way back to her true calling. Not by hiding her knowledge, but by using it when it mattered most, even if it was just to respond to a cruel man's order in a language he never expected her to understand. That's how you turn tables on someone who underestimates you. If this story of hidden talents and perfect justice made your day, smash that like button, subscribe to Heartline Stories, and share with someone who needs a reminder that you never know who you're dealing with. What would you have done in Zora's shoes? Let me know in the comments below.